Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of the Nexplorers podcast. My name is Jordan, and I'm so glad you're here. If you don't know what Nexplorers is all about, it's just basically us getting a chance to hear from visionary men and women from around the world and see what keeps them curious, what keeps them hungry, and really what are their thoughts on the future and exploring what's coming next. And my guest today is the president of William Jessup University in Rocklin, Pastor John Jackson. I met Pastor John Jackson maybe 7-8 years ago. I heard him preach and I thought, yep, that's the stuff. I'd love to be able to do that, to bring the word of God like that. He's going to share a lot about the future of education, which I think is a hot topic and something we need to be thinking about. How are we releasing students and what are we releasing them to? 2020 has introduced us to a brand new world and one that we need to be ready for and adjusted to not just further the gospel, but also further the dreams of hearts of men and women around the world. I'm so glad for you to be here today. Enjoy this episode of the Nexplorers podcast. Well, I'm here with, I could pick a lot of different things, but I would say I'm going to go with Pastor John Jackson. That I feel like that's how I've known you, and over the years, and it's just a great privilege to be with you. This is the Nexplorers podcast, as you know, but Pastor John has been. How long have you been president of William Jessup University?
Well, Jordan, before I say anything else, Pastor Jordan, it's so great to be with you and with your audience. Just love these kinds of conversations. So I've been at William Jessup University for about 9 years, since the early part of 2011.
Wow, that's awesome. When I first met you, I believe you were just right at the beginning there, because I was in Rocklin there probably 7 years ago. So that's really awesome. And man, from everyone I speak to, and I say this as a compliment, from everyone I speak to that's connected to William Jessup University, only good things. We have a pastor at our church here who has a daughter, and it was just like first choice, William Jessup, and that's saying something.
Well, that's really gratifying. Jordan, I know we'll talk about education, but I never imagined myself being a college president. Yeah. Every once in a while, people go like, "Oh, you're in that role. You must have always been dreaming of that." Not, it's just absolutely not what was on my timetable. But God has just been so good, and it's very gratifying to hear that comment from you. And I think God's just working. Students, faculty, staff having an amazing experience here.
Well, that's good. A little bit about Nexplorers is I want to hear what you think about what's coming in our world, in education. But, if you didn't dream of being a college president, what were the dreams of young John Jackson?
Well, here's the
and
quick
this is
story.
A safe place. This is a safe place.
Safe place. Okay. Well, I just got to give you the quick story then. I sometimes share this in churches. When I was a little boy, I was a pastor's kid. People used to pat me on the head and say, "Oh, you're going to be a pastor just like your dad." Yeah. And I remember, Jordan, gritting my teeth and muttering under my breath, not if I can help it, because I just didn't want to be a pastor. I love Jesus and I love the church. I didn't want to be a pastor. I wanted to be a pro baseball player. That was my life dream, man. I'd be shortstop. And long story short, I got to about my junior year in high school and I figured out I was good, but not great.
Yeah. Okay.
And just the logical part of my brain took over and I went like, "Oh man, I'm not as great as I always thought I was." And so I really had this life crisis, Jordan. I know it sounds funny, but age 15, 16, life crisis. What am I going to do? All my childhood, I've dreamed of being a pro ball player. And I wrestled with God, Jordan, for like maybe almost close to a year. Wow. And I kept asking God, I remember this, I talked to my parents, if God would just drop a piece of paper down from heaven, I'd do whatever he wants. I remember telling my folks, though, there's 2 things I will never do. I will never be a missionary, because in churches I grew up with, missionaries wear grass skirts, live in grass huts, and show boring slideshows when they come back to America. And the second thing I said is, I would 60s and 70s. So I said, man, I will never be a pastor. And my dad, kind of crushed him a little bit. Well, okay, Johnny, we're praying for you. Long story, but at age 16, I had this absolute clear call of God to be a pastor. And Jordan, honestly, I thought I was going to be a pastor, a writer, maybe a speaker, maybe do some consulting. That was my whole life. Never desired anything else. But have you ever had the sense that sometimes God was interrupting?
Yeah, all too often.
Yeah. Like, I don't know, Jordan. I don't think I learned that easily. I think God has to speak in super clear tones to me.
Mm.
So there was just a moment where he redirected my life, kind of took me by the shoulders and said, okay, you're going to go this way. And I became president of Jessup in 2011. But you'll be encouraged to know this, Jordan, because I know you like entrepreneurship and you like people to kind of color outside the lines sometimes. I still, 9 years later, call myself a barbarian at the higher ed table.
You need that on your desk.
Yeah,
Like when people come in and see you.
Yeah.
Ooh, I love that. I love that. Well, that's interesting because, maybe there's people in education and from an early age, they're like, I want to be in education. And so they probably go through some similar routes of education, of like training and stuff, but maybe you took a long way in or a different way in. And so that gives you a unique perspective. Because one of the things I wanted to ask you about was, what are some misconceptions about being a college president or even just working at a university, but for your sake, college president? Like, what don't we know? What are some misconceptions?
Yeah, let me tell you that. But before I do, give you a quick little word. Early in my life, even though I was going to be a pastor, I had a bad educational experience. I was in a school. They didn't believe the Bible was God's word. They kind of started making fun of it. And I just had this God thing where I went, I need to get a doctorate from a public university. I wanted, in other words, to be able to engage in that conversation with people who PhD University of Santa Barbara. Now, I'm not bragging, Jordan. I'm telling you, I got that when I was young. Yeah. And God always redeems our life experiences. And so what I want you to hear is this. I never thought I'd be a college president. But what God told me when I was young actually became part of what he used. So I became president in part because of gifts and calling, but also I had that PhD from a public university. So here's the thing that might surprise you. With all that preparation, 25, 30 years of leadership and ministry, is that as the president, you have amazing opportunity and limited power. You would think, gosh, I'm the president. If I work in higher ed, I'll just push some buttons and stuff will happen. But the way higher ed is structured, it's really a collaborative, cooperative environment. And you know this as a pastor. Pastors can announce vision, but people have to decide whether or not they're going to follow. Yeah, it's the same exact way in higher ed. No matter what your title is and the authority that carries with you, you still have to cast vision and help gather people, and people have to get it in their heart. They can hear it, but until they receive the word implanted, until they receive the vision imparted, it just doesn't shape the organization. So thanks be to God, Jordan. These last several years, we've had a lot of people who just said, man, that's the vision I want to be part of. And God's honored that. We have an amazing faculty and staff, and we're seeing his hand upon us.
That's awesome. Is there anything, before I get more specific, is there anything maybe you used to believe about education that you don't believe anymore? Like, are you like, you thought it was going to be this and maybe this is totally different?
Yeah, great question. I'm going to say two things, actually. That the first thing was, I used to think that having a college degree was an automatic door opener.
Okay.
And I no longer believe that. I believe a college degree with no experience is worse than a lot of experience and no degree. Okay. I think the optimal is to have both, and we can maybe unpack that a little bit. So I used to think a college degree was an automatic door opener, and in this day and age, I don't think that's true. That's number one. Number two, I used to think that colleges were big, huge bureaucratic things, and that's why I never wanted to be involved. I'm not a bureaucrat. I don't like to study something for 6 months and then think about making a decision and then, think about another 6 months. I like to make stuff happen. Yeah. But what I've discovered is that while there are administrative kind of process and stuff, that actually college can move pretty quick, especially a place like Jessup. We can go from, we call it ideation innovation, and then implementation, we can do that in about 6 months,
Wow.
which is for a college pretty cool. Like we can actually launch a whole new program, a whole new degree in 6 months. That's in higher ed land. That's pretty
That's fast.
good.
Yeah. Well, let's get into that a little bit
Yeah,
because
it is.
It's a weirder day than it was. I would just say at the end of 2019. So
Wow.
yeah, so you went to sleep one night and you had was it ideation, innovation, and what was the third one?
Implementation. Yeah, implementation. You actually implement it.
So that was a great idea maybe in 2019. And it may be now, but what's this year and just this start to the year done for you, and how has it changed the way that you're going about leadership with those ideas, which are awesome? I mean, where are you at with this? There's so much going on. What's in the mind of the William Jessup University president?
Yeah. Well, as you think about this, Jordan, so we've got coronavirus, we have horrifying injustice and civil unrest in our world and the challenges of all that. And there's a lot of questions in higher ed, like, okay, so in the spring, almost every school in America switched from higher ed face-to-face instruction to some form of remote learning. Mm-hmm. And in our case, we didn't go to sleep one night and wake up and everything was changed, but we had kind of been hearing the footsteps for a few weeks. But there was a night, Jordan, where we said, oh my goodness, California has changed. That's where we're located. California's changed.
Yeah.
So we had to adjust really quickly, and we did. We got all our classes to be offered. We already have some online, but got them all to be offered remotely. But think about this, Jordan. If you're a professor who has never before taught looking into a camera, now you got to figure out how to look into a camera and see your students. And it's just a very radically different thing, let alone all of our employees. Jessup has about 800 employees. 250 of those employees are full-time. We have about 75 faculty members, and a lot of them do online instruction, but many of them, this was just a whole new world. Oh, and by the way, their kids were now not in school. They were at home with them.
Yeah.
They were struggling with all the other stuff, maybe sick relatives. So let me fast forward. That. I know you do. Let me fast forward with this. Where we are, Jordan, today is we still have long-term plans and visions. 5 years, 20 years. I've got a vision that goes out to 2030. And we're pretty clear about that. But Jordan, long-range planning for us is in cycles of maybe like 6 months. And so we're clear about we're coming back in the fall. We're going to be face-to-face. It's going to be different. We can't control whatever happens with our local health department, whatever happens with our, with the state of California. We can't control that. What we can do is say, we're going to be faithful to the Lord, faithful to our mission. Our mission is we partner with the church to educate transformational leaders for the glory of God. That's kind of like why we exist. And our vision is to see leaders raised up in all the spheres of society. We're going to do that. We're going to be face-to-face. We'll have daytime, nighttime, online, face-to-face, hybrid, all those kind of things. But Jordan, we got to be ready with all those plans I just told you, and they're good. Yeah. We got to be ready tomorrow to change everything if everything changes. Yeah. So how do you hold fast to the vision that's clear and then hold loose your plans? Because your plans got to be able to change. I think that's one of the key navigational skills that your show is about in Explorers. It's about the future. You got to have clear vision for the future and good plans, but really loose hold on those because you got to stay fluid.
Yeah, man. What an adjustment too, to be able to imagine leading a ship that big, but wanting to turn it maybe that quickly if need be.
And may I say something here too? This is organizational leadership is kind of like maybe one of the gift areas that I have.
Yeah.
Everybody that I know, Jordan, in really large organizations, I former chairman of the board at Jessup, Pat Gelsinger, is head of a multi-billion-dollar company. So billions, not millions, and 25,000 employees or something like that.
Wow.
I think everybody who's big is learning that small and mobile and fluid is a competitive advantage. So as big as you get in our world, if you're in a church, you got multiple campuses, let's say you're a big, huge church, or let's say you're a small church, staying fluid, that is adaptability is a key skill. And then second of all, staying fluid and flexible so that you can have small units that can get deployed quickly. I don't know how familiar you are with literature, but it used to be called skunk works. A lot of big companies would go, well, let somebody on the margin do innovation. And then if it works, we'll bring it to the center.
Sure.
I think a lot of companies today are saying, nope, that's not how we're going to do it. We're actually going to bring what was called skunk works. We're going to bring it into the center, and we're going to have 5 different experiments going on at the same time, and we'll see what works. And in our setting, you and me, we'd say, we'll see where God is working, and we'll go there. Henry Blackaby, find what God is doing, go there, find what he's doing and cooperate with it. That's the vision that I think we've got to go for and be very flexible with that.
Yeah, it is. I've never read Skunk Works, but I have read Experiencing God by Henry Blackaby, and it's a great option for us as we're saying, what are we going to do? Well, let's see what God's already doing. In some ways it relieves the pressure. But as a leader, you have eyes to see further than others in regards to organization or many things. What concerns you? When you look out at the horizon of education, what are some of your concerns and what maybe that's mobilizing the barbarian that you talked about earlier? What are you going to battle for based upon, what concerns you potentially about the future of education and maybe even where we're at today? Yeah,
that's good. Let me start with kind of a long range comment, and then I want to come back to the very specifics of right now, 2020. Long range, Jordan, I think that at Jessup, we say 3 things. We want you to thrive spiritually, have your faith be built up, not torn down. Number 2, get a quality liberal arts education. By the time you graduate, you should read, write, think, and speak well. And then number 3, we want you to be exceptionally employable, meaning that your degree can be put to use. So I want to camp there for a second. One of the things I see in the horizon is increasing numbers of people, both young, 18 to 25, and then older and older and older students are going to get certificates and credentials that will be stackable into degrees. So I don't know all about your story, but if I recall, Pastor Jordan, you have not only some formal schooling, but you have real world church life experience at the same time.
Yeah.
And if I were to ask you, which was more important, book learning or actual practical people, the answer is and. It's the miracle of and.
Yeah.
And so I think that's going to happen long term. The education and training have got to be married more closely together and do that with low to no debt. At Jessup, we're about 1/3 less than the national average. One of my visions is that we will be 50% lower than the national average. Someday, I'd love for almost every student at Jessup to graduate. The panacea is no debt, but I think in some ways it's not bad for students to have an investment in their degree of sacrifice and recognize. But we're at 1/3 less. I want us to get to half less. And then my ultimate goal that I can see is 2/3 less than the national average, because I want students to be able to go to that future without being encumbered by that albatross of debt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, that was all about long term. Let me just talk about right now. I was born and raised in the home. My parents were very poor. My parents were pastors. I think my dad, he went to be with the Lord in 2001. So almost 20 years ago. I don't think my dad ever made more than $24,000 his entire life.
Wow.
And that's how I was raised. We didn't have food sometimes, but Jordan, I never saw a moment where Jesus didn't provide. Yeah. So when we have students who come to Jessup and they kind of walk around with their eyes wide open and go like, I never thought I could go to college. One of the
Yeah.
things I believe our society needs to do is find a way to help people have access to opportunity. And one of the challenges that's happening right now among our Black community is that Black, Hispanic populations in particular sometimes don't have the pathway to access for higher education and job training.
Mm.
I should quickly say, by the way, I'm not one of these people that says everybody needs to go to college. I actually think we need a bunch of people who go like, man, I want to be a plumber. I want to be a welder. I want to be a coder for computer programming, and not go to college.
Sure.
Because there's a lot of voc tech ed that's so important in our world. And I think we've kind of diminished that for the last 20 or 30 years. And as a college president, I'll say it's totally, in my view, bogus. The idea that everybody needs to get a 4-year college degree.
Right.
I'm for college, of course, but I also think there's value in voc tech ed. So I just want to say, I really, today, a lot of my day will be this particular day that we're talking, will be with some of the African-American students on our campus and some of our staff. And I'm just asking them to talk to me, And I'm going to pray that God allows me to just listen. I just want to listen, and listen hard, listen intently. I do know that in a lot of our communities around the state of California and in our nation, kids are stuck in struggling schools. They're stuck with breakdown of families, and access to education, access to training is not as good. The place where I live, a lot of the kids in my neighborhood growing up now, in the neighborhood I live now, they're going to college. It's an expectation from day one. There's no option. You're going to college, or you're going to master a trade. But there's a lot of kids growing up in broken families and pain-filled circumstances and poverty, kind of like I grew up a little bit. College or training is not an option for them. And that's a real burden that I have right now. And I think it's part of the mix of what's going on.
Yeah, I agree. And that's great to hear. I think too, one of the issues about what's going on with racial tensions and civil rights and things is we're just many of us not aware of what it's like, for a person of color or a person of different ethnicities. And you said even just the pathways sometimes just aren't available. And, and maybe to a person like myself, like I had every pathway available, and a lot of people speak into it, a lot of pathways. And so I think it's going to be massive moving forward. And it's awesome to hear you talk about it.
Hey, Jordan, one of the things too that I've been I'm an imperfect practitioner of everything I tell you. So I always say this, like I know the right thing to do, but sometimes I don't even do what I know is the right thing to do. So for what it's worth, let me just say this. I've been really burdened that people say, we need to do something. And when you ask folks, well, what do you want me to do? We can say things, we can pray things, and that's awesome. What can I do? I'd love to give your listeners just one thing.
Yeah.
If you did nothing else but find somebody of a different ethnicity, somebody of a different background, and just enter into the conversation with them and just go like, is there any way you'd be willing? And sometimes, by the way, in the midst of trauma, they're not able to.
Right.
But if you just say, is there any way you could just describe for me, like, what was childhood like for you? What was dinner time at age 12? Tell me about your teenage years. Like when you think about college, or what is that like for you? My life has been so enriched, Jordan, by hearing from people. I've had the privilege to do that here in the US and then travel internationally with some of my friends. And man, how they see and experience the world. It's just, you're wearing glasses. I have glasses. It's just a different set of glasses.
Yeah, totally.
And man, it's a mind, but it's also a heart and spirit expander when you can say to somebody, I just never thought about it that way. I never saw it that way. I never understood it that way. So I just think that's a really important part of what we can do.
That's awesome. It's true. So true. And it's also a great, I don't know if we could say easy, but it's if you commit to it, an easy thing to not only bless that person, but really start a process in yourself of understanding. And it's true. I've had some wonderful conversations in these past few weeks. Well, let's talk about William Jessup. I'm sure we'll get some listeners maybe thinking about William Jessup, and so how's enrollment going for 2021? Your fall and looking to the next thing, how's William Jessup been impacted by COVID-19? I know you talked a little bit about it going online, but not everybody's a fan. A lot of people, for me, as I went to school, a couple things. One, I struggled the most online because there was just a different level of probably a list, and you've heard them all. But for me personally, it was, oh, wow, I'm so disconnected from this learning experience. That was my perception. Now, when I went to higher education, I didn't take any online. So this was like junior college online before I went to university, it was tough. Anyway, but, still online. And so there's a level of disconnection. And then I think for some, that's not the dream, that's not going away to college, So how has that affected the culture at William Jessup? How has that maybe affected enrollment? All those things. Speak to them.
So I'm going to real quick give you like 60-second background. When I got here in 2011, it's William Jessup University. I'd never been a college administrator. So I asked this question: do we have any math degrees? No. Do we have any science degrees? No. Do we have any arts degrees? No, except for music. Do we have any graduate programs? No. Do we have any online programs? No.
Wow.
I said, in what sense is this a university? And they said, well, our name is inspirational. So thanks be to God, the last 9 years, we've seen amazing things, Jordan. And so we have sciences like crazy, kinesiology and biology. We have computer science. We have a number of programs we've added. Our theater program is award-winning. We have a visual arts program that's growing and strong, and digital media communications, just all kinds of growth areas. And we have more graduate students today than we had students in the university 9 years ago. So just thanks be to God, good things have happened. So here's what's happening. When you say, how's enrollment going and how's college going, you think like I did. I'm thinking of 18 to 25-year-olds who come to Jessup. A bunch of them live in the dorms and apartments and that sort of thing. That's what we call traditional undergraduate.
Right.
Jordan, I personally feel this. If you're 18 to 25, the vast majority of students do not want to go online. They live their lives on a screen in some ways, and that's not what they want for their college experience.
Totally.
It's like, yep, I can watch movies this way, but I do not want to go to school that way. They want the social interaction. They want to talk with a professor. If you come to Jessup, this is what I say to parents a lot of times, a professor with a PhD in their discipline will know your student by name within a week. Wonderful. That's an amazing gift to an 18 to 25-year-old, that they're getting a God-honoring, excellent professional in their discipline, sewing into the life of their student. So our traditional undergraduate enrollment is staying really solid. What I will say, Jordan, is that almost every traditional student across America is saying, I want to go where it's quality and affordable. And number two, where it's closer to home. COVID-19 has radically shifted the idea of, hey, I want to go away to college. Well, a lot of people learn being away, like across country or 500 miles during a national tragedy or challenge, that could be horrifying. So we're seeing a lot of students within, I would call it Northern California, Bakersfield North, Northern Nevada, Southern Oregon. That's really who Jessup serves the best. Now we got kids from Southern California and a variety of other states. We got kids coming internationally, but traditional undergraduate daytime, our enrollment is solid. Let me tell you where it's soaring. It'd be surprising to you to know how many college students across America are not 18 to 25. They're adults going back to college. They're doing graduate studies. So our graduate is soaring. Our degree completion for adults is staying solid. And then online is soaring. But I'll tell you where online's soaring. It's not soaring with 18 to 25-year-olds.
Sure.
It's soaring with people who say, look, I'm doing a job. Let's say they're a computer programmer. And if I got a bachelor's degree in computer science, my salary could go up by like 50% or more.
Yeah.
And so our online, and we have some significant partnerships that we're excited about, that the Lord's working at Jessup. So online is soaring, but not with 18 to 25-year-olds.
Right.
Enrollment's solid for the fall. And let me say one last thing. The cost of Christ-centered higher education is really challenging. I think we announced a tuition freeze. We're doing everything we can. A tuition freeze for anybody who comes to Jessup starting this fall. Tuition is guaranteed for 4 years. So
Wow.
whatever price you have coming in, we're guaranteeing it for 4 years. Second thing we did is we're offering extra scholarships for people in our local geography, like within the Northern California area. We gave $16 million in scholarships last year. So whatever the tuition price is, I think it's about $34,000. We do our very best to help for financial need, academic merit, athletic ability, artistic talent. We just really work hard to give scholarships out to make it possible for people to come to Jessup. So don't ever, at Jessup or any other Christian school, don't look at the tuition number and go, I can't do it. There's actually federal and state aid. And then an institution like ours at Jessup, we gave over $16 million last year to students, almost all traditional undergraduate, by the way.
That's incredible. Yeah, I guess that's true. I think even funny now coming full circle, I probably would consider online class now as a 33-year-old. So just a different state of life, and
well, Jordan, I just right close to my house, my wife, love her dearly, been with her 40 years. She would just go like this: I'm never doing online. So she did face-to-face. She's just not a tech person. She uses it, but she just doesn't love it.
Yeah.
She did her master's degree 100% online and loved it because she's at a different season of life. You got kids, you're married, you got work and stuff. And so you like to be able to do it with convenience. So that's it's not surprising to me that 33 online might work for you in a way that it didn't at 20.
Yeah, totally. And it accomplishes a different goal, I think, too. And you spoke to the 18 to 25-year-old, I think, is not excited about like, all right, college, and it's all on the computer. There's a whole lot of life, I think, even just as an American, like that we're almost programmed to think what college is. Like, I'm going to make my best friends. I'm going to be married in 3 months, or I'm going to meet the person I'm going to marry in 3 months.
Yeah.
We can't, it doesn't work on Zoom. I don't know. Are people falling in love on Zoom? Maybe they are, but
if they are, it makes me nervous, and by the way, this is kind of a side subject. People panic at this all the time. Like a lot of our faculty members are freaked out when I do this. I will stand up in chapel, Jordan, and kind of do the classic, like, hey, your future spouse might be in this room in chapel right now.
Yeah.
And you know what? If you love Jesus and you love each other's family and your vision is together, I'm for it. Some of our faculty members freak out, but I think, God, what better place to meet a future spouse than at a Christian college or at a church where, you knit your heart together, you share your life's dream and passion. Like, what's better than that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when it comes to that, somehow now we're talking about people meeting their spouse, but
I'm a romantic, man.
Yeah. Hey, I'm all about it. I would say you're going to meet them somewhere.
Yeah.
Might as well meet them in a place that honors the Lord and is trying to build up your life. It's
so good, Jordan. Yeah. So good.
Because when I met my wife, I was 16 and that was just way too hard.
And your head exploded. And people get freaked out. Your head exploded, right? You saw her, you talked with her, and your brain and your heart just went like, this is it. You didn't know all the language for it, but something went on. Yeah, something went on. Yeah, that's good.
That's true. That's amazing. As we look to the future, it's impressive to hear you speak. Nothing about what you're saying to me is giving the impression that it seems like William Jessup is already thinking a little bit of ahead of the curve and even being fluid and, okay, what's our online program look like and all that stuff. But with that said, I'm sure you still look at some things and go, even based upon the culture, how about let's just take, when I look at some of the video of riots and protesters, a lot of young people, a lot of young people, a lot of Christians out there who are broken, and don't stand for what's been going on. And so there's this rallying of people for justice. And, so what does William Jessup do to position itself to, in the name of Jesus, help and not hurt? And then the question I had submitted to you earlier was, do you think that something needs to change about William Jessup culture based upon what we've seen, and what adjustments need to be made, just moving forward? I don't know. But, as the president, what do you look at the university and go, you know what, this might need to be tightened up, or we might need to do this moving forward because I feel the Holy Spirit leading,
Amen. So Jordan, I'm going to just throw out 3 or 4 things, but before I say anything else, let me say, I'm a white male in a position of significant authority.
Yeah.
And so I think I told you, it just so happens today, I have like 3 or 4 really meaningful conversations where I'm just really praying and pressing in some of our African-American staff and students. And I want to listen to them.
Yeah.
And then tonight we have a prayer vigil. Because of all that's been going on in our culture, we just have a prayer vigil that will go out across the internet and in our chapel. And so here's a few things that I've been grappling with. First of all, let me say this, and I know it'll sound like I'm preaching. In John 10:10, Jesus told us the fingerprints of the enemy. He said the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. So whenever you experience things being stolen, killed, or destroyed in your life personally or in society, that's the fingerprints of the enemy of your soul.
Yes.
In that same exact verse, Jesus said, I came that you might have life abundant and free. When you see life, abundance, and freedom, the fingerprints of Jesus are on that.
Yeah.
One other thing, and then I'll stop preaching.
No,
Ephesians 6. Ephesians 6, Jordan. A lot of us read that verse. We go like, yeah, I totally believe in the Bible. Then we read Ephesians 6. Yeah. For our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and rulers in high places. Now, if you believe that, as I do, and I know you do, you look at your TV screen and you go like, oh, those police officers, oh, those kids, oh, those, and I'm just going to say it. I know this is hard stuff. Oh, those white people, oh, those black people. Yeah. And we start getting fixated on the flesh and blood. I'm not saying there aren't very real flesh and blood. I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. But Jordan, as followers of Jesus, as ones who have the same spirit that raised Jesus from the dead living in us, we have to live vertically. Yeah. That's the anchor of our lives, is that vertical, full of the Holy Spirit, right relationship with the Father. And then we interact horizontally after we have that vertical clarity. Yeah. So let me talk about horizontal. Micah 6:8. Love justice and do good and walk humbly before our God. I think on the Jessup campus, one of the things I want to hear is when I first became the president here at Jessup, I said this in the interviews. I said, this is the whitest college campus I've ever been on in my life. Because I grew up in Southern California and I was freaked out at how white it was. Yeah. And that this larger community is pretty Anglo dominant. But so I've been working hard, and Jessup as a whole now is majority non-white. But our traditional undergraduate campus, just here in Rocklin, going to school during the day, is very, like maybe 65% Anglo. And that's not true, by the way, of our Northern California geography. So sure. I want our campus to reflect who we're drawing from. So I'm working hard on that. Something that's got to change is African-American students at Jessup tell me that they experience periodically subtle or overt indications of racism. So I've asked them, come talk to me. And we're having those conversations. So I want to learn. I want to listen. I want to learn. And I know, Jordan, that Jessup has work to do on the ground, real world, right now kind of stuff. Yeah. And we're going to lean into that. I can't tell you all the things that we have to fix, but I had a phone call yesterday. I mean, every day I have these kind of calls, but yesterday where I just said, talk to me. And it was by Zoom because of circumstances, but people were saying, do you know about this? Do you know about this? And I'm just trying to listen. Yeah. the hardest thing for me, Jordan, is to not get defensive in those moments. Because man, my back wants to get up and go like, I know that people don't intend to be hurtful, and I don't intend to be hurtful. But man, there are times when I know I am hurtful, and I'm a strong guy. I've got opinions. I got political opinions. I got, spiritual opinions. I got organizational opinions, and I'm imperfect in all those. But I think, Jordan, what's got to change at Jessup and what's got to change in our culture is we need to learn how to have civil, respectful conversations with people with whom we disagree, and really hear people's heartbeats and figure out how to change in a way that honors the Lord. But I'll go back to this and I'll be quiet. We've got to live vertically with a John 10:10 and Ephesians 6 worldview permeating us in the power of the Holy Spirit.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's really wonderful. And I think it's a great reminder too, because I think everybody lives on the horizontal, people, just humans, that's where we're at.
Yeah.
And so what comes from Ephesians 6 is the ability, to equip ourselves with the armor of God, but then have the understanding that there's more going on, which I think is so much of what we feel when we're overwhelmed is like, what are we supposed to do? The answer is not in the horizontal, right?
That's right.
We just can't find it. We just can't seem to, what law is going to pass and what leader is it going to be? It's just never going to come on the horizontal.
I know this will sound fatalistic. I don't mean to. Whatever the results of the next election, and I think that's super important.
Yeah, I hear
whatever
you.
The results of the next bond or proposition in a California ballot, and I think those are all important.
Yep.
I'm totally for Christians being engaged in the public square. That's a lot of my life, is to exhort that. Whatever those things are, that is not ultimate reality.
Yeah.
Ultimate reality is in the vertical.
Absolutely.
We serve a different king, and we're members of a different kingdom, and we have to be present in a redemptive fashion, salt and light, full of grace and truth, in the horizontal realm. But the answers, as you just so well said, come from the vertical.
That's good. Okay, wait. I need to just tell somebody outside my door something real quick. Give me a second.
Go ahead. You got it.
All right, cool. Sorry about that.
Hold on, just
yeah. Finish what you're doing.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I could hear my kids getting ever closer to this door. Yeah. Well, man, great thoughts. Maybe I could just wrap up the William Jessup bubble we were in for a second with just, you got maybe some students at home, maybe some students considering things. I'm sure, knowing you over the years, that these people look to you as pastor, not just president. Why don't you just take a second, pastor your students for a minute? You haven't seen them in a while. I'm sure that's a heartache. I'm sure for all the staff and things. I know you care about them a lot, and I want to ask you some questions about you, and we'll get out of here. But to your students, all that's going on, maybe you could just give them a shout out. What do you want them to know? What do you want them to be thinking about?
Yeah. Well, thanks, Jordan. And I've tried many times to talk to our Jessup students and our Jessup community, but for whatever reason today, my heart is really focused on this. I do feel like a pastor, a shepherd. I do want to shepherd the Jessup community, but I'm a flawed and failing and imperfect shepherd. And my responses to you personally, and my responses to our larger community, we do everything we can to have those be sufficient. But I just maybe want to press in on a couple things. First of all, there is a shepherd who's perfect, and his name is Jesus. And whenever my life's in despair, and whenever I don't know what's going on and why is this happening, and turmoil, man, I just try to make a beeline to Jesus. When crisis comes, instead of running away from him, I run towards him. And I just have found over the course of my life, and others who've testified, that's the safest place, is in the arms of Jesus.
Yeah.
Second of all, I'm not trying in any way to detach from the reality of the pain, the injustice, and the horrors that we see. And I just want to say this to this emerging generation. You are not a generation of trauma. You are a generation of hope. You are a generation of miracles. Jesus has placed in you the same spirit that raised him from the dead. So when you hear your generation's about trauma, you're going to be affected the rest of your life, I say this: say no to that.
Yeah.
We partner with the Father. We do not partner with fear. You are a generation of hope, a generation of miracles. I believe your generation can see the kingdom of God. Jesus prayed this, that the will of the Father would be done on earth as it is in heaven. I believe that you can be instruments of the will of God on earth. Yes, you need to participate in elections. Yes, you need to participate when necessary in peaceful protests. Yes, you need to see change come to society, but not fundamentally and foremost on the horizontal realm, on that vertical realm we've talked about. And that's really what I would urge our students. I want Jessup students to be warriors for the gospel and the kingdom of God, peacemakers, ambassadors of the kingdom. We represent the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. That's
Amen.
what I would say.
That's well said. Thank you, Pastor. That's really good. And that's a great word, man. You're not a generation of trauma. You're one of hope. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, lastly, I want to ask just some questions about John, then I'll let you go. And you got bigger things to do than hang out with me on this morning. So
I don't know about that. Come on.
I know it takes a certain level of creativity and I think curiosity to be able to have enough, either be brave enough or dumb enough to be a president of William Jessup University.
I'd be a little both, man.
So maybe a slight. It's just pressure, And I think in our jobs, in our lives, we get kind of engrossed in what we do. And you mentioned Blackaby, Henry Blackaby earlier on, and one of the things I love from that book, Experiencing God, is just this invitation to be on journey with him outside of the things I do, more just he's Father and I'm a child of God and I get to be in that. And so I just want to ask, I want to look to how Pastor John's wired, and if you don't know, he's an author too. How many books have you written?
I believe it's 8.
Right, I was going to say, this is the one that I have on my shelf, which I haven't read all 8, but this is one of my favorite books, Pastorpreneur. And I think the title alone speaks for itself. But it comes from a person who I think knows how to stay curious, knows how to look to influences in your life. And so I want to hear some of those. I want to know how Pastor John doesn't get bored. And I don't want you to answer that question based upon, I know your to-do list is large, but that's not what I mean. A large to-do list, you could also be bored with that, but what keeps you alive, and what keeps you curious about the things of the Lord? Yeah. And maybe you could hit on some of your major influences. Like most of the time, I'm sure students come to you, or there's tons of people coming to you, Pastor, for a drink. Like to come into your well for some leadership, for some guidance. I'm doing it today. I'm pretending like I'm a host, but I'm actually just wanting you to help me with my life, And so, but where do you go?
So good.
For some to help you stay curious, help you stay sharp. Who are your influences? Ready, set, go.
So I'm going to do this as quick as I can because just a well of things are coming up. I have hundreds of memories, Jordan, of my father kneeling at my bed and praying at night. Till I go to my grave, I will never forget my father praying at night. I have hundreds of memories of my mother being up. She's a morning person like I am, being up early in the morning, fixing me breakfast and talking with me at the breakfast table. So my mom and dad. Early on in my life, I was fortunate to have some people who poured into me, and some real notables. I had people in churches who were faithful. When I was a bratty PK in church growing up, they loved me and poured the word of God in me. And so wonderful childhood influences, and I could name many of them. I want to do a special call out, Jack Hayford, Pastor Jack, who to this day continues to be somebody. And I wasn't of his tribe. I was a Baptist kid, a Baptist pastor, and I used to go to his pastors' conferences, and he poured into me. And there's so many others. Billy Graham from a distance. I never knew him personally, but John Maxwell poured into me at a certain season. And so I just am grateful for all of that. I'm going to tell you what happens to me today. It's two things. It'll seem like really disparate. If you said, hey, John, what keeps you going? What keeps you alive? Part of it is I think I've learned, I wasn't like this in my 20s, Jordan, and early 30s, but I think I've learned to not focus on achievement and not focus on striving. I was really focused on that early in my life, and God just had to really correct me, discipline me. But I try to take wonder at the little things. Like, I think I was a good dad. I might have been a rotten husband in some ways, but I was a good dad. I used to look at my children and see the little things they were learning and take wonder at that. I do the same thing with my grandkids now. I just take joy and delight. I look for the fingerprints of God. When I see somebody who comes to know Jesus, to this day, Jordan, I can't not weep. When I see somebody who prays and presses in and God heals their body, I can't not weep. I'm a crier. I don't know if I got low testosterone or what, man, but since being a boy, my heart's been soft towards the things of the Lord. So Jordan, I just keep taking joy in that. I will not let the enemy rob joy. He's a thief, man. He comes to steal joy and kill hope. And so anyway, I try to just take joy. And I'm getting teary-eyed now thinking about some stories of people who the Lord has touched. I think that keeps me going. So staying curious to me is about staying a learner, being full of appreciation and joy. A lot of times we'll just stop and watch a bird. I don't know anything about birds, but I just watch a bird fly and go like, whoa, that is just so amazing. Yeah. And I think that just cultivates wonder and appreciation in your soul. It's not uncommon for me, Jordan. I do not have good musical skills. If you listen to me sing, you would just pray to Jesus for me to be mute.
It just went to your daughter. It just
So my daughter, my wife was a music major in college, and she, my daughter is a very, very gifted worship leader, and all my kids are gifted artistically, and I just take joy in that. So I listen to worship music on a regular basis. Of course, I love my daughter's worship music. I listen a lot of times to teachings. I've become good friends with Chris Valentin and Bill Johnson, and a lot of the ministries that come out of Bethel, I have a deep appreciation for. But, Jordan, I'm a John 17 believer. Jesus prayed in the garden that we would be one as he and the Father were one. And this is the phrase most people don't get. They get the one part, but it says, so that the world may know. Yeah. And I often wonder, Jordan, if the reason the world does not know is because we, his kids, are not one. Yeah. And I'm not talking about we meet all in the same church. I'm not saying we force agreement on all issues. I think God is a God of diversity and variety. So I'm good with all kinds of churches. Yeah. But I receive from people who are amazing expositors of the word, and that just touches my heart. And then people who are passionate, sort of prophetic declaration. I love that. And then there's people with worship intimacy, and that draws me in. And other people focus on community. So I just say this, Jordan, man, I try to hear what God is saying, see what God is doing, and just rejoice in that. And Jordan, I haven't always been like that. There have been other times in my life where I might go, I don't know if that's of God. I don't know if that's, in other words, kind of a judgmental and critical spirit. Sure. And I've just really tried to say, look, I'm a person of the word. I'm a person of the spirit. I want to do word and spirit. It's the miracle of and. Yep. And as I do that, I just want to be discerning. I want to be wise. But man, I can listen to a good word. I can hear a worship song and just be broken. So staying soft before the Lord, staying in the spirit and not in the flesh. That's why I was talking about that vertical and horizontal. Jordan, oh man, when I'm watching those TV things that are going on, when I'm seeing injustice, when I'm seeing structures in our society or people saying stuff, I just pray for the redemption of our culture, because I know how quickly I can snap into just being in the flesh.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll close with this. John Bevere, many years ago, wrote a book called The Bait of Satan.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a really weird title. And you go like, what the heck is he talking about? What he's talking about is bitterness.
Yeah.
What he's talking about is offense. When we carry bitterness or offense with us, it destroys and decays our soul.
Yeah.
And man, I am so quick in my natural, in the flesh, so quick to go like, oh, I'm offended. And you can be angry at injustice, but not let bitterness and offense take residence in your soul. That's the challenge. So
that's good. Yeah. I think when I read that book as a maybe 18, 19-year-old, and I just would have never thought of it. Just the title alone, bait.
Yeah.
It's bait.
Wow.
And someone's trying to get me. Yeah. That's good. That's really great. Okay. A couple more questions and then we'll be done. If sometimes, I know you're at the university. I'm wondering, is there something that John Jackson is thinking about in the back of his mind? Nobody knows. An idea he has, a dream he's got, something he wants to look into, that it may not be for today. But has John Jackson had any new 16-year-old shortstop moments, with the Lord, where you had that like, wow, like, I think I'm going to think about this, what's John exploring? Maybe what are we going to see John exploring in the next 5, 10, 15 years? As the Lord calls him again from one baseball field to another.
Now, Jordan, I have a board. I have people I'm accountable to. So
I'm not saying you're leaving. I'm not saying you're leaving.
Right.
I'm saying in your heart. In your heart, yeah. I'll put a disclaimer at the bottom. John Jackson does not approve of any of these things. So
anything I'm about ready to say, I don't approve of it. Yeah, so Jordan, that's actually a really great question. Let me just tell you, I want to use the word convergence.
Cool.
Convergence. Family, church, business, education, culture. I think the next season for me, quite frankly, at William Jessup University, so I think I'll stay the president. But I think part of the convergence that he's birthing in me, man, I love the family. I love the church. Like, I am just radically committed until the day the Lord calls me home. I am pro people of God. Yeah. I think the church, by the way, is going to look very different in years to come. Big church, small church, house church, louds. We're just going to have all kinds of manifestations. And I think that's good. Yeah. So I really have always had a heart for business. That shocks a lot of people, but the pastorpreneur title is just, I've always loved business. And I think I'm getting opportunities to link together the convergence, if you're familiar with a Venn diagram, the overlapping places between family, church, business, education, and culture. Let me talk about the culture piece. Education you get because of what I do here. But Jordan, I've always been an externally focused pastor. But since I've been the president, I now have a platform to speak into the region's economy. Yeah. To speak into these settings that I didn't, a lot of times I tried, but as a pastor, sometimes I couldn't even get in the room. Well, as the president, I can get in the room. And when it comes to culture, I'll be careful with this, but I really struggle with the political spirit, which is about division, the political spirit, which is about demonization, the political spirit, which is about polarization. And I really believe that when I say culture, what I mean is governing and a political, without being political spirit, activity to shape the culture. Way back, you talked about 16-year-old dreams. In my early 20s, I wasn't 16, but in my early 20s, I remember saying this out loud. America has lost its defining moral center. And what I meant by that was, I know not everybody's a follower of Jesus. I know not everybody goes to church. Not everybody's even a person of faith. A lot of people go like, hey, I'm agnostic or atheist. But the culture, the greenhouse of America, I'm worried about, I'm burdened for, because I think God's given us a special assignment. I think we're a blessed people. I was talking to somebody the other day. I didn't do anything to deserve to be born here in North America.
Yeah.
If I was born in sub-Saharan Africa, the reality is the economic aspects of my life would be radically different.
Yeah.
So what I do is say, I'm a blessed person. Because I'm a blessed person, I have a responsibility to be a blessing. All of life is a stewardship. So I think America has a special stewardship opportunity. It's not about dominion over other people or other nations. It's about being a blessing to the nations. I wrote to our campus recently that I'm praying that we will be for the healing of the nations. But we got to heal us.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that's part of what I'm dreaming, Jordan. I'm not running from society. I'm not running from the fires that are burning now. I'm not running from the civil unrest. I believe, kind of like an Esther for such a time as this, Nehemiah, Joseph. You think about Daniel, people who are in those times. I kind of feel a little bit like that. So I'm dreaming convergence dreams. How can God use this platform in such a way to redeem world culture in a way that honors the name of Jesus? And by the way, if you're not a believer in Jesus, I don't know who listens to your podcast. If you're not a believer in Jesus, you want to live in a culture where Jesus honoring values are present, because you'll flourish. Yeah. It's funny, back in Jeremiah tells the people of Israel who are in captivity to pray for the peace of the city to which they are called. And I think that's what believers everywhere need to do. We need to pray for the peace of the city to which we're called.
Yeah, that's good. That's great. Convergence. You heard it here.
Convergence. I'm dreaming convergence dreams.
When you see the new book on Amazon.com, Convergence with John Jackson, I'll feel really special with that.
That's you helped really launch it right here, Jordan.
Yeah, I'm sure. Me and you and whoever, my mom who's listening, we're going to launch Convergence together. So
your wife will listen too, so she can hear what you were feeling at 16.
That's true. Yeah. No, maybe I should edit this then. Well, really good to talk to you. Really great things you shared today. I just want to say I appreciate that you have a perspective that goes beyond just maybe what's right on your desk today, but you're looking to the hearts of people, and you, as you just said, not even just on your campus, although that's a major piece of who you are, and that really came through today. But I think even as I listen to you talk, you're thinking about the world that your students are going to go out into, and that's important.
Yes.
And then how will they go into that world, with what type of education, with what type of debt, and what you're doing it seems like what you're doing and praying for and believing for to set them up for success is really wonderful. And so I just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you, Jordan. I thank you for being, I've always believed that you were a pastor who was not detached. It's kind of sad to me that sometimes as churches and as pastoral leaders, we kind of get focused with our heads down on our thing, and we ignore the city around us. I think of you as a pastor who's got your eyes up. You're looking to the Lord, but you're also looking and saying, what field has he called me to? I'll say to people, your address is not an accident. It's an assignment.
Nice.
And so you are a pastor who I believe leads your own life and those around you to be aware of where he's called you to. So I just pray blessing on you as well, my friend.
I appreciate that. So before I let you go, if anybody wants to find out more about William Jessup, or they want to be connected to you, I mean, what do you got? You got some social media hits, you got some websites to throw at them?
Well, I'll give you two. If you go to Jessup, JESSUP.edu, you'll find everything you want to know about Jessup. You can also click on the Office of the President page, find me, or you can go to www.drjohnjackson.com, drjohnjackson.com. It's a real simple website. I haven't done real commercial stuff with it. Basically, you're going to see a little bit about me and a blog. And I've got all kinds of books on Amazon, and you'll see the links there. Nice. But I just want to encourage people, Jessup, JESSUP.edu. And then you can go to drjohnjackson.com if you want to read a little bit more that I've written about on blogs and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, I'll put all that information in the description below so you can check that out. So, Pastor John, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so
All
much.
right. God
Talk
bless
to
you,
you soon.
man. Take care.
Thanks again to Pastor John Jackson, president of William Jessup University. For more information about William Jessup University in Rocklin, California, how you can enroll, or just looking for what their school is all about, you can visit jessup.edu. And all of those links are below in the description if you're listening on Spotify or iTunes or at jordanabn.com. For more resources, you can always go to jordanabn.com, as I'm putting out things every week to encourage you, to equip you, and just to stay connected during 2020. Music by Andrew Arcadi, and I'm your host, Jordan Abina. God bless you. See you next time.